You just spent $75 on an oil change, and within the next 48 hours, you could be seconds away from ruining your engine without even knowing it. Last month, a customer handed over $5,200 for a replacement engine only 2 weeks after getting fresh oil. A single quick check would have saved him completely. Today, I'm breaking down 12 costly mistakes drivers make right after an oil change. The same mistakes that quietly destroy engines every day. And make sure you stay for number 1. It's the hidden danger almost no mechanic ever mentions. Let's get into it. 12. Ignoring the oil pressure light. Most people dismiss the oil pressure warning because they assume everything is fine after a service. But fresh oil doesn't guarantee the system is functioning properly. If that light comes on, something is wrong, and ignoring it can be fatal for your engine. If that oil pressure light flickers on after your change, something went wrong during the service. Maybe the drain plug wasn't tightened properly. Maybe the filter wasn't seated right. Maybe they didn't add enough oil. If that light comes on within days of an oil change, pull over immediately and check your oil level. Don't assume it's fine just because the service was recent. But even if your oil pressure is perfect, there's one driving habit in the first 24 hours that can wreck everything. Here's what I mean. 11. Driving hard immediately after the change. You leave the shop and immediately floor it onto the highway. What you need to know is that fresh oil needs time to circulate and coat every internal surface properly when you first start your engine after a change. That new oil hasn't fully reached your cam lobes, valve train, and bearing surfaces yet. If you immediately redline your engine or punch the accelerator hard, you're creating extreme pressure and heat before the oil has properly distributed. This causes metal-on-metal contact in critical areas. A Toyota Camry owner told me he got an oil change during his lunch break, then immediately drove 80 miles per hour back to work because he was late. 2 weeks later, his engine developed a ticking noise. Turned out he damaged his camshaft lows during that aggressive drive right after the service. Cost him a whopping $1,800 to replace the camshaft. Imagine that. So here's my advice after an oil change: drive gently for the first 10 to 15 minutes. Let the engine warm up gradually. Give that fresh oil time to flow everywhere it needs to go before you demand full performance. But gentle driving won't save you if you make this next mistake that most people don't even know is a problem. Quick reminder, if this kind of nonsense advice is helping you catch problems before they blow up your wallet, hit that subscribe button now. 10. Not checking your oil level within 24 hours. Most of you folks just trust the shop completely and never verify the oil level yourself. Look, mistakes happen. A tech gets distracted. The oil gun malfunctions. They think they added 5 quarts, but only added 4, or they overfilled it by a quart. Both scenarios destroy engines. Underfilled means not enough lubrication. Overfilled means the crankshaft whips the oil into foam, which doesn't lubricate properly and increases pressure that can blow seals. A nurse in Denver brought her 2019 Subaru Outback in for an oil change at a quick lube place, never checked the dipstick afterward. 3 days later, her engine started knocking. Turns out the shop only added 3 quarts instead of 5. Imagine her paying for $1,500 for rod bearing replacement before they completely failed. That's the cost of this mistake. You sure don't want to be caught in there. So here's my expert advice. And you have to pay attention now. C. Within 24 hours of any oil change. Whether you did it yourself or paid someone, check your dipstick on level ground. Make sure the oil level is between the min and max marks. Takes 30 seconds. Could save you thousands. Free check. For $1,500 repair. You do the math. But even the perfect oil level won't help if you do what we're about to cover next. And 70% of people do this without thinking. Here's your homework. Go check your dipstick today and tell me in the comments what you found. I read everyone. 9. Mixing oil types or brands immediately. This scenario happens very frequently and almost everyone is guilty. Your oil level looks low a week after the change. so you top it off with whatever's in your garage. Oftentimes, it's a completely different oil than what the shop used. Here's why this matters. If the shop put in full synthetic 5W30 and you top off with conventional 10W40, you've just changed the viscosity and additive package of your entire oil system. Different oils have different additive packages, detergents, anti-wear compounds, viscosity modifiers. When you mix them, those additives can interact unpredictably. Some combinations reduce the oil's ability to protect under high heat. A Honda Civic owner got an oil change with Mobil 1 synthetic. A week later, he added a quart of cheap conventional oil he found on sale. Within 2,000 miles, his engine developed sludge buildup because the mixed additives weren't compatible. Guess how much he paid in atonement for that error? Yeah, you guessed right. It cost him $900 to flush and clean the entire system. Take that as a light warning. If you need to add oil after a recent change, use the exact same type and weight that's already in there. If you don't know what they used, call the shop in, ask, or just bring it back and have them top it off with the correct oil. Now, topping off correctly won't matter. You ignore this next thing that happens in the first week. 8. Not inspecting for leaks after the first few drives. Most of you folks never look under your car after the oil change to check for leaks. Now, I'm not blaming you for this. Even professional techs make mistakes. A drain plug that feels tight might not be torqued to spec. An oil filter gasket might not seal properly if there was old gasket material left behind. These leaks start small, just a few drops, but over days they get worse. The drain plug vibrates loose, the filter shifts. Suddenly, you're losing a quart every 500 meters, and you don't even know it. 3 weeks ago, a college student brought us his 2015 Ford Focus. Engine had seized. He'd gotten an oil change at a chain shop 2 weeks prior. We found the oil filter hanging loose. The old gasket had stuck to the engine block, and when they installed the new filter, it double gasketed and never sealed properly. All his oil leaked out over 2 weeks. He ended up spending $5,200 for a used engine swap. After your first drive, post oil change, park on clean concrete or cardboard. Let it sit overnight. Check for drips in the morning. Look specifically under the drain plug and oil filter areas. Catching a leak early costs nothing, ignoring it costs everything. Speaking of things people ignore, this next mistake is something most drivers do every single day without realizing it's destroying that fresh oil. 7. Towing or hauling heavy loads too soon. Fresh oil needs a break-in period under normal conditions before you subject it to extreme stress. Heavy loads create massive heat and pressure inside your engine. If the oil hasn't had time to stabilize and properly coat all surfaces, you're risking accelerated wear. This is especially true with synthetic oils, which can take 50 to 100 meters to fully bond to metal surfaces and reach peak performance. This reminds me of how a guy in Texas got an oil change, then immediately drove 200 meters, towing a 6,000 pounds camper in 95 heat. His transmission overheated, which contaminated his fresh engine oil through the shared cooling system. He had to spend about $2,400 for transmission service he wasn't planning for, plus an immediate second engine oil change that was ruined after just 200 meters. Don't be like this guy. If you need to tow or haul after an oil change, wait at least 100 to 150 miles of normal driving first. Let that oil settle in. Let it prove itself under regular conditions before you ask it to handle extreme duty. Now, I got to hand this to you. Towing isn't even the worst stress you can put on fresh oil. This next one happens every single morning. 6. Cold starts with immediate acceleration. It's Monday morning. You start your cold engine and immediately back out of the driveway and accelerate onto the street. But this is what you don't know. Cold oil is thick. It doesn't flow well. When you demand power immediately after a cold start, you're asking your engine to perform before the oil has reached all the critical surfaces that need lubrication. This creates brief moments of metal-on-metal contact in your valve train, cam lobes, and bearings. Do this every single day, and you're accumulating massive wear over time, even with fresh oil. A Toyota Tacoma owner had a 15-minute commute to work. Every morning, he'd start the truck and immediately drive off aggressively to make it on time. After $60,000 his engine developed a loud ticking noise. Worn camshaft lows. $2,100 to replace the camshaft and lifters. Damage that accumulated from thousands of cold, hard starts. After starting your engine, especially in the first few days after an oil change, let it idle for 30 to 60 seconds, not 10 minutes. Just long enough for oil pressure to build and oil to start circulating. Then drive gently for the first mile or two until the engine reaches operating temperature. Your oil is fresh, but it still needs time to warm up and flow properly. Give it that time. Hold on just a moment, because gentle driving isn't about to protect you. You make this next storage mistake that ruins oil before you even use it. Quick question. Be honest in the comments. Do you let your engine warm up before driving, or do you just go? I want to know. 5. Not keeping your receipt or service records. You get the oil change, toss the receipt, and forget about it. This seems minor until you have an engine problem under warranty and the dealer asks for proof of maintenance. If you can't prove you've been changing your oil regularly, they can deny your warranty claim. Even worse, if you can't remember what oil type was used, you can't properly top it off later without potentially mixing incompatible oils. A Hyundai Sonata owner had engine failure at 78,000 miles, well within the powertrain warranty, but he'd done his own oil changes and never kept receipts or records. Hyundai denied the warranty claim, citing lack of maintenance proof. Man had to pay $7,800 out of pocket for an engine that should have been covered. So, listen! After every oil change, keep the receipt. Take a photo of it and store it in a folder on your phone labeled Car Maintenance. Write the date and mileage on the receipt. Know what oil type and filter were used. This takes 10 seconds. That Hyundai owner lost $7,800 because he didn't do it. This documentation is worth thousands if you ever need warranty coverage, and it helps you maintain consistency in the products you use. But documentation won't save your engine from this next habit that people do constantly in the first month after a change. For short trips only after the oil change. Let's say for the first few weeks after your oil change, you only drive short trips, 2 to 3 meters to the store, 5 meters to work, nothing longer. But you know what? Short trips are engine killers. Even with fresh oil, your engine never reaches full operating temperature. Moisture and fuel vapors accumulate in the oil and crankcase because the engine doesn't get hot enough to evaporate them. This contaminates your fresh oil immediately within a few hundred miles of only short trips. Your brand new oil can be as contaminated as old oil at 3,000 miles. Studies show short trip driving can contaminate oil up to 3 times faster than highway driving. A retired teacher drove her Honda CR-V only for errands, 10 trips per week, all under 3 miles. She changed oil every 5,000 miles religiously. At 65,000 miles, her engine was full of sludge despite perfect maintenance. When she took it to the mechanic, they quoted $3,400 to disassemble and clean the entire engine. That's why in the first week after an oil change, I always advise to try to take at least one 20 to 30-minute highway drive. Get the engine fully hot. Let it run at operating temperature long enough to boil off moisture and contaminants. This keeps your fresh oil actually fresh. And speaking of keeping oil fresh, this next mistake is something dealerships do that quietly destroys your engine. But hold on, because we're about to enter the danger zone here. The final 3 mistakes aren't just bad. They're how did I not know this? Levels of catastrophic. Trust me, you don't want to skip these. Let's keep going. 3. Trusting the oil life monitor blindly. The shopper sets your oil life monitor and you assume it's accurate for your specific driving conditions. Oil life monitors are algorithms. They calculate based on average driving conditions, mix of highway and city, normal temperatures, moderate loads. But if your driving is harsher than average, that monitor is lying to you. If you do lots of short trips, tow frequently, drive in extreme heat or cold, or sit in traffic constantly, your oil degrades faster than the monitor thinks. A Ford F-150 owner followed his oil life monitor religiously. It said 35% remaining at 7,500 miles. So he kept driving. His driving was all short trips with heavy loads, way harsher than the algorithm assumed. When he finally changed oil at 10,000 miles, the oil was black sludge. Guess what? He paid $900 for an engine flush because deposits had already started forming. That's why after an oil change, don't just trust the monitor. If you drive under severe conditions, which most people do, change your oil at 50 to 60% on the monitor, not 0%. Your engine will last twice as long, but even frequent changes won't save you from the second worst thing on this list, and it's happening right now in most driveways. 2. Parking on an incline immediately after. When you park on an incline, oil pulls to one side of the pan. If you start the engine while parked at a steep angle, the oil pickup tube might be exposed to air instead of submerged in oil. This causes a brief moment of oil starvation during startup. The pump sucks air instead of oil, even with fresh oil. This creates where because critical components don't get lubricated immediately. I remember a guy in San Francisco called Jesse who got an oil change, then parked his BMW on his steep driveway for a week while he was traveling. When he came back and started it, the engine made a horrible grinding noise for 3 to 4 seconds before oil pressure built. That brief oil starvation damaged his variable valve timing system and made him spend $1,600 to replace the vanos, solenoids, and tensioners. If you must park on an incline after an oil change, try to park with the engine facing uphill so oil pulls toward the pickup tube. Or better yet, park on level ground for the first few days while the oil settles properly throughout the system. But as bad as that is, and trust me, it's bad, nothing compares to the number one thing people do that destroys engines faster than anything else. 1. Ignoring other fluid checks after the oil change. Here's where things get crazy. Imagine you get an oil change and assume everything else is fine. You never check coolant, transmission fluid, brake fluid, or power steering fluid. Here's the thing. Fresh oil can't save your engine if your coolant is low and your engine overheats. It can't save you if your transmission fluid is contaminated and wearing out your gears. Most catastrophic engine failures don't start with bad oil. They start with another fluid problem that escalates into engine damage. A couple of weeks back, a woman brought in her 2020 Mazda CX-5. The engine was overheating constantly. She had 3 oil changes in the past year. Never missed one, but nobody ever checked her coolant. Turns out she had a slow leak for months. The engine overheated so many times it warped the head. She had to pay for $1,800 for head gasket replacement and cylinder head resurfacing. Damage that fresh oil couldn't prevent because the real problem was coolant. So, listen! After every oil change, what to do is to check all your other fluids. Pop the hood and look at coolant level, brake fluid, power steering fluid if you have it. If you have a transmission dipstick, check that too. An oil change is the perfect reminder to do a complete fluid inspection, because maintaining one fluid perfectly while ignoring the others is like brushing your teeth, but never flossing. You're still going to have problems. Quick recap. Checking your oil level takes 30 seconds. Inspecting for leaks costs nothing. Keeping your receipt is free. These tiny habits prevent thousands in repairs. So there you have it. If you learned even one new thing today that'll save you from a costly repair, hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe for more real-world car advice that actually matters. The stuff mechanics know but don't always share. Here's the thing. There's a video on your screen right now about common maintenance myths that are costing you hundreds of dollars. Click it on the left and I'll meet you there. Got your own oil change horror stories or tips I missed? Drop them in the comments below. Thanks for watching.